Welcome back to another edition of the Gabagools Podcast, episode 39. With me today, Disco Dan Inferno.
Disco D. That's what they called me back at the roller rink back in the day.
Why do I feel
Yeah,
like you were a terrible rollerblader?
can't do it. Can't rollerblade. Can't ski. Can't snowboard. All of those type of not really using your feet and having something on there. Can't do it.
Balance in general.
But wasn't great at gymnastics. Now that you bring up balance, the pommel horse couldn't do it. Wasn't my strong suit. I didn't mind doing the. I don't know if it was the vault or the one where you jumped and you did like the thing. You just like jumped on a mat off that like board. That one wasn't bad. But yeah, balance for me, no, can't do it.
Lots of questions behind that one, but did you have to do it in high school or what?
Yeah, we had a gymnastics unit. I forget when it was, sophomore or actually junior or senior year. I think it was towards the end. But
Okay.
yeah, that was not my favorite. I didn't mind the swimming unit. That was one you have like once or twice during your tenure for high school. Swimming was great. I'm a great swimmer. Look at me.
Yeah.
I know how to swim. But some of the other ones just can't do it. They're just I wasn't gifted with those skills.
No, yeah, it's funny because out by me, we didn't even have swimming, we didn't have gymnastics or anything like that. But I do remember now that I'm thinking back to it when I was in middle school, when I was in Schaumburg for like the first quarter, they did have. I think they had swimming. We didn't. I didn't do that one, but I think they had gymnastics too. Now that I'm thinking about it, because I remember like the rings and stuff, and there was only one person who could do it, and it was because and he was a deaf kid too, of all things, like. He was super jacked, but like no
That's what
idea.
they say, right? When you lose a sense, your other ones are stronger. So you can't hear, but you can do the rings.
Yeah, it was pretty wild, but yeah. Anyway, back on track with sports here. For episode 39, did get one player here that was worth noting. Ricky Henderson wore number 39 in 1979 with the A's. He won the 1990 MVP, two-time World Series champion, multiple other accolades, but mainly what everyone knows him for is the leading all-time record in runs, stolen bases, and caught stealing. Uh, his records for the runs is 2,229, and for stolen bases, 1,406. So 1,406 stolen bases, which is incredible. And I looked at it too, and his averages were just insane. And you'll never see anybody, I don't think, break that record, because the next closest one is Freddie Freeman with, and this is for runs. Let
Yeah.
me mind you. I make sure I clarified it. There was with 1298.
Geez, I mean I mean, yeah, over 2,000 runs scored. You talk about Ricky Henderson, and everyone, you go right to the stolen bases. I think as he's a guy. Yeah, we've seen baseball recently, the last couple of years now with the new rules. We've seen the stolen base kind of come back, which I find awesome. I didn't love that people weren't stealing bags, and now we saw Acuna last year steal 70 something bases, and we're seeing it's not that guys aren't quick enough to do it. They just everyone was incentivizing the home runs and putting the ball in the stands, but it's fun to see the stolen base come back. The 1,400 career stolen bases. I mean, I don't know. I mean, yeah, the run scored is definitely obviously it's a bigger number. Obviously, that's tougher to get to, but the
Right.
1,400 stolen bases, man. Even with stolen bases coming back, I just don't see. I just don't see someone breaking that.
No, I don't either. And the next closest active player has 354, and that's Starling Marte. I mean, best case scenario is Acuna steals 100 bags a year, and maybe by the time he turns 40, he touches it, but it's not even close. Pretty much, you have to have a 19-year-old kid come up and be the fastest player, and then steal a base, but. You're not seeing those type of players really. I think the game has just evolved, but who knows? Like you said, with the rule changes and the bigger bags, I think we might start seeing an increase in it, which would be great.
Obvious, yeah. I mean, it'd be great. That was a part of the game that our parents grew up watching with people stealing bases, and back in those days they would you stole second base, they'd tackle you. You're not stealing that bag from me, but um,
Right. Yeah.
It is fun, and that's the thing too. Is stealing a base. You think about 1,400. It's like, yeah, that's a large number, but you start breaking it down. You do 50 a year, right? You're still, at 10 years, you still need an extra 400, and you got to be healthy, and stealing bases. Not everyone is that quick. Acuna, we just saw him get hurt for the second time with that Achilles, I think. So
ACL.
or the ACL.
Again. Yeah.
But so even someone like him, I mean, he just had all those stolen bases. How many more is he going to really steal with that
Right.
injury now? Ellie De La Cruz, we've seen him, but he's got to pick up the average and stuff like that too. A lot of times these guys with the great speed, they hit for like a lot lower averages, which is another reason why these guys don't stick around that long. If you're going to hit 200, even in today's game, that's still not going to get it done. So.
Yeah, no, Ellie De La Cruz would be like the one that I would probably give him the best chance,
Yeah.
just because he is only 22 years old. And he's stolen, let's see, he stole 67 last year and 35 in 98 games the year before. Like you said, health will be a big thing for him. Um, but like we're talking best case scenario, he breaks into even 1,000, you know. But like you said, I mean Trey Turner too. He used to be
Yeah.
he was like the prolific one for a while, but we'll see.
We shall see. Yeah, injuries are a big thing. You get hurt, and you got to be on the field. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean when we're talking about injuries here, we'll we'll stay on baseball for one more second. But just a question for you: do you think the injuries will tarnish Mike Trout's career and kind of prevent him from being the greatest of all time?
It certainly looks like that. I mean, someone that you could kind of compare him to, at least with how good he was those first 10 years or so, and then with some of the injuries that have really cost him, career stats, is maybe like Ken Griffey Jr. And Griffey still
Yeah,
ended up with like over 600 career homers, I think, and he had monster numbers. But he's like that one that people say like if he didn't get hurt all those times and miss all those games, he would be potentially the home run king, or he would have some of those all time stats. So I think you have to say yes with the Trout thing, because it's been the last. You'd have to look this up, but I mean, it's the last 3, 4, 5 years. He's not just missing a week or two. He's missing a month, a couple of months. Half the season, and you miss a month, you can still come back and have a really good year. You can still hit 30 homers. You can still get hot. You start missing 2 months or more of the season, just like you said, that starts to cost you, your overall legacy of how good you are. And frankly, Mike, if you're listening to us right now, I'm sure you are. If you're listening, get the fuck out of LA, man. If you're gonna, I don't even want to see him in a Dodger uniform. But honestly, I think I'd almost rather see him play for the Dodgers than the Angels, because they're just so bad. They're just the most dysfunctional. I mean, they don't know what the hell they're doing.
yeah, and that's another thing too with him playing for the Angels of all teams too. Is it's rough because of not a lot of people watch him, and that's one thing that I've kind of said on past podcast is that the West Coast, the stars on the West Coast, you never see them because they play at 9 o'clock at night,
Yeah,
and then almost 10 o'clock at night on the Eastern time. So you see them when they play out east or maybe in Central. I know firsthand I've actually had opportunities to watch Otani play, Trout play in Chicago. I've seen both of them a couple times. Just because those are like once in a lifetime opportunities to go see. I
yeah,
saw Trout at Wrigley probably before the pandemic, I think it was, and then I ended up seeing Otani and Trout probably 2021 or 2022 at the cell, and it was awesome because both of them hit home runs, and it was a game that the Angels won like 10 or 12 to like 3, which is fine because I was like, I'm going here knowing that the Sox are going to probably lose, but I got to see Trout hit a home run. I think Otani's was a grand slam, so that was pretty cool. But yeah, I think overall, like, if you want to know how many games he's played since 2020, and yes, the 2020 season was shortened, but he's only played 319 games, and that's basically 64 on average. So you're I think unfortunately with his age, we and I want to say that's the last we've seen of him. But I think at that MVP potential caliber at year in and year out, unless he one DHs full time, or B ends up like moving into the infield somehow, or ends up on a better team where he can get a little bit more protected. But like you said, I don't think he leaves LA though.
Yeah, I mean, a couple years ago when he signed that contract, I was kind of happy because you don't see a ton of loyalty, and I thought, okay, Mike's staying there. I mean, they still paid him an assload of money, but
Yeah.
um, you just kind of had that feeling with the Angels, even when they signed that contract. Like, okay, you signed Mike, we get it, you've had him, you still got to bring other people over here and get it done. They haven't
Yeah.
been able to do it, and you've squandered the guy's best years that he's probably going to have. I mean, can he still have some monster, best years he's ever had? Sure, but the chances aren't in his favor as much anymore. How old is he, really quick?
Mike
32,
Trout
33?
is 33.
Yeah, I mean, he was the man for probably close to a decade, and then I feel like I don't know about you. I mean, he's been out of the spotlight for years now with all the
Oh
injuries.
yeah.
It's been Judge now and Otani and Acuna last year.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of like fantasy baseball, I mean, he used to be the consensus 1-1 every year. I mean, he was a first round pick that you would keep like regardless of like, if it was a keeper league, he was like on your list, like you kept him no matter what because when he did play, he won you weeks single handedly. But yeah, he pretty much has kind of fallen off since then. But enough baseball. We'll touch on them during the winter meetings and more free agent signings. But let's jump into football. Week 11. Take us away.
Week 11 review. We're going to hit you with every game as we always do. Pow, bam. And as we always do, we start with our Thursday night game. So here we go. Boom. Slow start by Philly until the fourth, where they score 20 points and glide, waft, flap, and flutter for their eighth win, 26-18, Eagles.
Get this man a thesaurus.
Thank you. In a battle of nice tight ends, I need like this one, the Minshew-Bowers combo was awesome, but Tua Janu were better. Miami wins 34-19. Is he a quarterback, running back, tight end? Couldn't tell you. But Taysom runs for 138 yards and 3 touchdowns. So let's say he runs the rock. 35, 14. Nola. Okay, here we go. He's back. Ron Burgundy's back. No, that's Anthony Richardson swooping back in the starting lineup to beat the miserable Jets, Jets, 28-27. Darnold continues strong season as Vikings take care of Titans 23-13. This is a good one. Does a bear shit in the woods? Apparently not these bears. They like to shit in our mouths. 2019 Pack. Earmuffs for anybody who was under, a certain age.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. Monster game by Detroit. Lions absolutely maul Jaguars 52-6. Oh, mama. Good day for May, but the future Hall of Famer Stafford said, not so fast, rookie. Throws 4 touchdowns, 28-22 Rams. Another reason why Mike Tomlin is the man. Upset Ravens in Steel City, 18-16. Woo! Eagles and Ravens and Seahawks, oh my. It's the year of the birds as Seattle wins late over San Fran, 20-17. Upset alert. Bo knows quite a lot. Has career day versus Falcons, 38-6. Josh puts Bills Mafia on his back. Runs for late touchdown to seal the deal and hand Kansas City first loss of the season, 30-21. Bills. And the last one we've got is Harbaugh Herbert proved too much for Burrow's Bengals. Get the dub on Sunday night, 34-27. And as always, we've got the Monday night game, Houston at Dallas tonight.
All right, well done. Each week it gets better and better, and I enjoy the hell out of it. So hats off to you for coming up with that. Let's jump in Thursday night, as we always talk about. Jaden Daniels always looks like he can take over a game at any point. Kind of oh duh comment on that one, but Eagles kind of have come back with a vengeance the last I don't know, what would you say, 5 weeks? They just have won almost every single game. A lot of close ones, but they're finishing them off. The defense, I think Vic Fangio is doing a great job with that defense. It's making it really difficult on teams. I think they made Daniels kind of look like a rookie at times during that game, which, it's bound to happen. Nothing against Daniels, but, Barkley is just showing why he should have been kept over Daniel Jones. And it was the most idiotic thing the Giants could have done was, for one, get rid of him, and then two, let him go to the Eagles of all teams that has a great run scheme and a great run block. So offensive line.
Yeah, and you know what? I don't know how much Saquon is getting paid with the Eagles, but we all know Danny Dimes is getting an ass load from New York, and he was just benched for Tommy DeVito coming into this next week. So, yeah, I mean, anyone who was involved with that decision to let Saquon go and keep Danny Dimes and pay him needs to be, if not fired immediately, what they would have done in the olden days was they would have either burned you at the stake or they would have taken the medieval guillotine and they would have chopped off your head. I mean, but also, too, for the other side, the Eagles, just like you said, you said this a few weeks ago. Sirianni, has kind of been doing this and that. But like you just said, the Eagles are finding ways to win. I think they're 8-2, and they are looking like that team again. That's like, okay, Philly is back again. So watch out for those Eagles.
Yeah, absolutely. They're leading the division pretty handedly now. I think they'll probably end up winning it. Not a surprise though. But yeah, Eagles out on top. That being said, let's pull the Band-Aid off right away. Let's just we're doing Green Bay. We're doing Green Bay, Chicago first.
Oh,
It was kind of funny. So I had all 4 games on YouTube TV and I'm watching it, and minute left, I'm like, oh my God, the Jets are going to win. And then the Bears are going to win. I was like, oh, this is kind of a great, everyone will be happy. I can be happy about it because but back in the Chicago Green Bay game here, Caleb was elite on that last drive. That game-winning drive he would have had, and this is like 2 weeks in a row now, or 2 games that he's led back, like a comeback, and it's gotten foiled because of stupid coaching. Bad down the stretch. They should have ran the ball at least one more time, ran a couple more plays. They literally came up to the line and sat there, waited for the clock to run down. Didn't do anything. Even Brady was calling it and was like, you had time for more plays. You could center the ball. You could make it a little bit easier for your kicker, but you decide, hey, I'm going to go kick a 47-yard field goal, and it gets blocked. And the best part is the special teams coordinator for the Packers said on Saturday night, he told his team that they're probably going to block a field goal or a PAT because Cairo Santos's trajectory of the ball is so low that it's so much easier to block. It's just heartbreaking. And, they had the Packers right where they wanted them, to go bring back, I think, what's his name? What is his name from? He was a Cardinals coach. Bears beat him. He made the famous quote, we are who they thought they were, or something like that. They are who we thought they are.
I think I know who you're talking about, but I can't think of the name offhand right now.
I mean, they had the Packers beat. They had them beat. And this would have been huge because you're talking, okay, giving slight hope to the Bears that, like, hey, they're sneaky. They could kind of, the rest of the schedule was really, far-fetched. But, you gave hope. You lose that game. Packers walk off again. Matt LaFleur, I think, is like 11-0 against the Bears, which is insane. Jordan Love hasn't lost to him. I don't know. It's Eberflus once again just needs to go. I'll pass it over to you.
You know what? It's you said we had them right where we wanted them. We've had the Packers right where we wanted them multiple times over that last 11. I think they've beat us 11 times in a row, I think is what it said, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
yeah, it's been since like 2018, and that was just because like I think they beat them at home on like a late game or something like that.
I don't know if you remember this, but I was like, all right, we're going to beat them. This was a couple years ago when we still had Khalil Mack, and obviously Rodgers was still doing his thing in Green Bay. We might have even been in Green Bay in the game, and I think we still had Trubisky. Mack was looking good. Rodgers gets hurt in the first half of the game, and the Bears are up big, and you're like, oh my God, we're gonna win. We're gonna do it, right? What happens? Rodgers goes in the clubhouse, locker room, pops a couple perks, comes back on the field, says, I can't feel anything, but I'll still throw for 250 in the second half or whatever, couple touchdowns, and we lose. That is basically how being a Bears fan is. The block kick, yeah, it sucks. The Hail Mary a couple weeks ago, yeah, it's the only silver lining here is that the Jets are just about as bad, if not maybe even worse than we are this year. So
They're definitely in a worse situation, which I'll touch on
yeah,
in a minute. We'll jump to them right in a minute, but funny you mentioned that game, that Rodgers game, because it was like opening week too. I'm pretty sure because I remember I had Rodgers in fantasy at that point too, and I'm like, God, like he's not doing anything. This sucks. He just got hurt at halftime. My season's probably done. And then he came out that second half and just lit him up, and that was great. That was such a good game to
oh
watch.
yeah, it was great. Oh, it's great.
Yeah, but yeah, getting a field goal blocked, getting your heart ripped out over and over and over and over again.
Yep.
But moving on to the Jets. Yeah, losing to the Colts. Anthony Richardson had a really good game, and when I mean he had a good game, he had 3 rushing touchdowns. He showed a lot of strides, but once again, the Jets defense is lost out there. Since they fired Salah, the defense went to shit, and I don't know if that's correlated. I don't know if it's because we're stretching the head coach too thin, as I said multiple times. But I mean, the season's over now officially. They're dead. Dunchain is on, which is fine because now we're just looking ahead to the draft. But yeah, not good. I mean, what you do from here. I mean, the problem is that they're like I saw a report that their GM Joe Douglas is likely gone at the end of this year, which is not a surprise. And then they'll obviously clear house with the coaching staff, bring somebody new in. But I don't even know what you do at this point. My scenario, you have to ride with Rodgers one more year at least. And I'm not even thinking that they could even be a Super Bowl team, depending on what coaching staff comes in and lights a fire under this team and what the GM does. But you're going to be picking in the top 10 more than likely because I just don't see them pulling out too many more wins. And then you draft a QB in the top 10 and hope you have him sit behind Rodgers. You have Jordan Travis as well. He could be a nice like little competition. I don't think being a 5th-round rookie, I don't think he's going to be that good. I hope he is, but you have him sit behind Rodgers one more year and then just learn as much as you can. You have Adams hopefully for like another year, and you try to salvage whatever you can, and maybe like hold on this defense. But it's definitely not going to get any easier for them. But I mean, it's the owner, it's ownership. Woody Johnson is just terrible. Apparently, he was the one who made the choice on firing Robert Saleh and doing the Devontae Adams trade. He ruled over his GM essentially. I mean, I don't know what more you can do, but at this point, you're stuck with Rodgers. You're stuck with Adams. I mean, I don't know. Got nothing left.
Yeah, I agree. I think you probably roll with Rodgers at least another year. I mean, he's what, like 40 now, 41. So, I mean, after next year, I mean, he's probably hanging him up. Hopefully, you can, maybe you get something from Travis. Maybe you draft another guy. You have nice pieces. Maybe you can make some trades. Who knows?
I mean, Sauce Gardner has looked horrible this year too. Unfortunately, he was he came out on his rookie year, won defensive rookie of the year. Was a shutdown corner. People were comparing him to Revis, and he played that part really well. But now he's getting burnt on big plays over and over again. It's like, what are you doing out there? Yeah, and you just can't stop the bleeding. But yeah, I mean, best case scenario, you get a Cam Ward from Miami. I don't think they'll lose high enough for Shadir, and then Dion also wouldn't let him go to New York. I know that. Um, let's see, Carson Beck from Georgia, possibly. But once again, it's like I don't know if I mean, these are just names, and then Quinn Ewers from Texas. Those are some of the
Yeah.
guys that you could possibly draft. I mean, the offensive line needs work too. That's the thing. Um, yeah, not good though.
No, it's a NONO for the Jets.
Yep, to say the least. Moving on, Detroit dismantling Jacksonville 52 to 60 or 52 to 6. No Trevor Lawrence. I mean, Doug Peterson's horrible. We kind of knew this, but this also just speaks lengths to how good Detroit is. Their offense, their defense, everything is good on that team. Jared Goff bounced back big. Had a massive game. What, 4 touchdowns? I think he threw for.
He only had like 3 or 4 incompletions. He was about as lights on as he could be.
Yeah, he's super efficient. St. Brown had a nice game as well.
More than nice game. He had a monster game.
Yeah, I know. I was trying to trade for him in our league. Actually, it's kind of funny, and I can say it because no one else listens into the podcast. So definitely tried to trade for him, and I almost pulled one off literally seconds before the noon kickoff, and then we just didn't do the trade because obviously just the games were starting, and if you player gets hurt, you don't want to get screwed. But yeah, I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs, he had a touchdown. David Montgomery had a touchdown. Pretty much everybody did. So yeah, Detroit really good.
Yeah, and they did all that without Laporta. Jameson Williams came back. I think he had a TD. Just like you said, Detroit's for real. I want to see them in the playoffs. I want to see them against the best of the best. I want to see if they can get to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, it would be interesting if they do. I think if San Francisco misses the playoffs, which is a really big possibility this year,
Yeah.
you could see Detroit kind of running the table, and that's crazy to think about without Aiden Hutchinson. But yeah, they're good. Jacksonville is awful. I mean, no T-Law, so can't blame him. But yeah, not good. Next up, Minnesota at Tennessee. Minnesota won 23-13. Will Levis had a decent game. He had a couple big touchdown passes, but I think he had like a 93-yarder to one of his wide receivers. I can't think of his name, though.
The
It's
Westbrook, yeah.
Westbrook Akeen is like pretty much
Okay.
the only guy there besides Ridley. And then, yeah, after that, it was just pretty much Minnesota just picked them apart. But Minnesota also a good team.
I was just going to say, Minnesota, good team. Tennessee, not. So there's not a whole lot else to say with that one. You kind of knew Minnesota would win.
Yeah.
8-2, the Vikings are. You talk about a tough division, man. NFC North has kind of come out of nowhere.
Yeah, they've definitely all stepped up. I mean, I think the Bears were. I mean, if you win two more of those games, you're talking like one of the better divisions in football. But yeah, unfortunately, Minnesota and Detroit and Green Bay are all good at the same time. So we'll probably see 3 teams in for sure.
We might.
Nothing more on Minnesota really to say, but yeah, they'll probably make the playoffs, and it'll be interesting to see how far Darnold leads them.
Very interesting.
Vegas at Miami. Miami kind of kicked their ass. Tua did Hawk Tua all over Vegas. There you go. Brock Bowers, though, can we talk about him for a second? Generational talent. And I think I mentioned it to you on the podcast when we were breaking down fantasy. But that guy is an elite asset. And I hope Oakland drafts a QB or brings in somebody that will fix that team from the QB perspective.
He I was able to draft him in one of our leagues, and I didn't really check my teams much yesterday. I checked it I think early this morning, and I saw that a couple of my teams were not projected to do as well, but a couple guys had some big weeks, and Bowers was one of them. And I love this guy. I mean, if there's a man crush button, I don't know, I don't have it on the desk here, but I would be slapping that sucker right now. That dude is That is a freaking dude, man. I didn't understand why the Raiders drafted him. He just took that Michael Meyer kid from Notre Dame the year prior or whatever. But you've got a guy like Brock Bowers. Yeah, you just said generational talent. He is. When you talk about some of the top guys, I mean, this is going to go down as a really good draft. I mean, all the skill players that have been drafted have all been pretty darn good. I mean, we could get into that another week, but yeah,
Yep.
Bowers is he is the man, dude. He's unreal.
Yeah, I mean, this was something that we kind of knew about for a couple of years because he played in that Georgia. I mean, he was a part of the Georgia teams that won the national championship. I think he won 21 and 22. So they went back to back, and he made an impact as a freshman. And I remember sitting there and being like, he's going to be a top 5 pick in a rookie draft when he comes out. And sure as shit, he is. I mean, you could have made the argument that he goes. I mean, I don't know now because Malik Neighbors has kind of fallen off a little bit production wise. Marvin hasn't been that. So, I mean, if you want to talk strictly fantasy, I mean, Jaden Daniels, number one. And then, I mean, it'd be hard to argue that you take Brock Bowers too. And just add a talent. This is one of the biggest things for fantasy too. Is this is why you draft talent over landing spot. Terrible landing spot, like you said. Michael Mayer's there, no QB, shit team, but you draft. I mean, same with Malik Neighbors. Awful team, awful QB, talented player. So, just for all you fantasy, goers out there, and maybe Dan will learn a thing or two from that too.
Man, I hope so.
Yeah.
0-11, right? 0-11?
Yeah. Yeah, 0-11. You'll be the first one in that league if you don't win a week.
Yeah.
That will go 0-4. But
Well,
I mean,
I'm not winning.
You're tanking though, so it's not like you're like actively trying to win.
It's a rebuild. Everyone knows that. So
Yeah.
for everyone in the league watching right now, just know that I'm coming. All right, and I'm coming hard, and I'm coming soon. So just remember all that. You heard it.
Coming soon.
I'm
Literally.
coming hard. Yep.
Coming too hard. And all right. Next game, Rams at New England. This was a close game. I did see a fun stat that the Rams have been outscored significantly in the first quarter, and have had horribly slow starts, all year long. And I think the Rams are that sneaky team in the West to win that division, except for the fact that the Cardinals dismantled them when they played them. But Rams beat a pretty good QB in Drake May. I think people are going to regret passing up on him. I mean, he was picked third, so it's not really, I think Caleb and Jaden will be just fine. But May is the real deal.
Yeah, you know what? I said this just a minute ago, but Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, Drake May all look like they're going to be pretty good. And this is, rookie year. They're all playing. Then we've seen big stuff from Harrison and from Neighbors and then Bowers. I mean, there were a ton of guys in this draft. And you still have other guys like Brian Thomas, who's had a really nice year for Jacksonville. And Adunze, I think, has been decent. I know we've had our struggles, but I mean, it's been. If you were drafting those guys this year in fantasy and you have them for dynasty, you're looking good for a while. The Rams, though, Bo Nix, again, and he was obviously after all those guys. But the Rams, man, when they're healthy, Kyron Williams is great every week. We've been saying that since the start of the season. You've been saying it. Yeah. And Puka and Kupp, as long as they're healthy, and Stafford's out there every week, those two are basically a walking almost 100 yards receiving almost every single game. They both had over 100 this week. I think they both caught a touchdown. Those two, one of us mentioned this a few weeks ago. As far as the top, like the best wide receiver tandems in the league, and then if you want to add the quarterback in there too, it's tough for me to go outside of Stafford, Kupp, and Nakua when they're all healthy. That three is about as lethal as it gets on offense.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. This is a must win for the Rams too. I mean, New England's been kind of sneaky with a couple of their wins, but the Rams are 5-5 now, tied for second with the Seahawks and 49ers, and then Arizona 6-4. So, I mean, it's like I said, that division's a gauntlet.
What a division. Oh my God.
Yeah. And like you said, Puka had 2 touchdowns today. That was pretty, or yesterday. That was pretty big. Him coming off of that injury that he had, so making up for lost time. But yeah, I'd like to see what that division ends up looking like at the end of the year. I mean, Seattle got a win against the 49ers. I think the Rams did too. It should be interesting going down the stretch.
I don't think most people had Arizona in first place at week 11 either. So
We
yeah,
did.
that division, yeah,
Yeah, we sure didn't. We had them
no,
finishing last. I'm pretty sure.
I think so.
Um, Next game, Cleveland at New Orleans. Not a whole lot to talk about here except for Taysom Hill. Probably frustrating a lot of Alvin Kamara owners out there just because of all those damn touchdowns. And this happens at least once a year. And then he's going to be hurt like next week and he won't play at all. But it's either like, and he's kind of an interesting one to start in fantasy too because you could start
Yeah,
him and then he could do like he put up like 55 normal points, which is insane, or 40 something points in a tight end premium. He put up 55. But that being said, pretty insane just in general to see Taysom Hill, quarterback, running back, tight end, whatever you want to call him, just constantly is a consistent player. And it's kind of funny that as long as he's been in the league, each of their coaches just decide to feed him the ball, and he just like plows over people constantly.
he's an interesting one because I've seen him definitely have some weeks fantasy wise where he doesn't do a ton, but then you have these weeks where you get in the end zone a couple times and you're like, oh man, I can't not start this guy, and you know it's funny because if you look at his stat line for this game, I think technically he's a quarterback. I think technically that's what his designation is. Maybe as a tight end,
Yeah,
but
you could start him as a tight end most in most leagues. I mean, I know in our league that we play in, you could start him as a tight end.
but he was 1 for 2 for throwing the ball for like 10, 15 yards, and he had a pick. So you're like,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, maybe we'll use him as a tight end or a running back. Like
Do you remember that he actually did start? I think they started like 1 or 2 games for them like a long time ago because I think they were just that desperate where they had no other QB. And I remember he was throwing the ball better than Drew Brees at that point of Drew Brees' career as well.
a he again, he's an interesting guy. I could see him playing quarterback and being under center for some games. They've got Derek Carr over there. I mean,
Yeah.
we'll see. We'll see how that team. Taysom Hill is probably one of the most interesting players we have in the league. So yeah, we'll see if he ever gets his chance to be a quarterback.
Yeah. New
I
Orleans
don't
is
think so.
one of those teams that I don't know what to think about them. They're in
Yeah,
cap hell. They're just not good, and then they're in cap hell. A lot of expensive guys on their books, but we'll see. Um, Next game, pretty boring. Honestly, it was a boring game until like the last 2 minutes, in my opinion. Baltimore at Pittsburgh, 18-16. Pittsburgh ended up winning. Baltimore missed the 2 point conversion that would have put them ahead. They pretty much just beat the snot out of Lamar Jackson. And this is what doesn't make any sense to me. Whenever the Ravens lose, it's because the defense, whoever schemes up their defense, ends up making Lamar pass the ball. They abandoned the run. I think Derrick Henry, and let me look it up, he had less than 20 carries. I know that for a fact. It was less than 20. But why are you not just running the rock? All the games that they're like plowing through these teams, Derrick Henry's had like 20 plus touches. He
yeah.
only had 13 for 65 and one. That's why you bring him in. Let him go, and he gets better as the season goes on. The more touches he gets, the better he gets. And I don't know if it's because people get worn down from tackling that big tractor, but I don't know, man. Baltimore
It,
basically kind of blew to the division, their chance at the division this week. They're still going to make the playoffs, but it's going to be a tough sled ahead for them.
yeah, Baltimore lost a couple early in the season when they weren't feeding Henry the rock, and then they started feeding them, and you start winning every single game that you're, letting him, like you said, 20, 25 carries or more a game, and you see him rushing for 140, 150. Pittsburgh, though, man, I had Baltimore winning this game. I'm sure most people did, even though Pittsburgh going into this game, I think was 7-2, and I think now they're 8-2.
Yep.
That's why I said Mike. I mentioned Mike Tomlin. He name a better head coach in the NFL right now. People want to look at Andy Reid. I mean,
Andy
hey,
Reid.
sure, but he's also got Patrick Mahomes to work with.
Yeah.
You talk about the quarterbacks Tomlin's got to work with, and some of the receivers. It's not the same. And the guy's never had, as far as Tomlin goes, he's never had a losing season as a head coach, which is remarkable, especially with those last couple of years after Big Ben. Um, Pittsburgh's a scary team. They don't scare you as much as some of the other teams, but they just find ways to win games, man. And that's all. That's all it is. You win the game, you're the winner, and they win more games than people want to give them credit for. So
Yeah, honestly, they're a sneaky team where it's like you just look at the standings and it's like, oh, they won again. And yeah, they have a good division they play in too. It's always a gauntlet.
you don't
Um,
really want to play that team come playoff time if they're hot. I mean,
no,
they're a tough
in
team.
Pittsburgh, and they have a chance at home field advantage
Yeah,
too. It's not going to get any easier for whoever has to play them too. So, I mean, if you look at the standings right now for the playoffs, they're sitting at 3 behind Kansas City, obviously, and then Buffalo's right behind them. But a couple more wins for the Steelers, and we're talking about them getting a bye week. They do play the Chiefs second to last game of the year. I think it's on
so
Christmas Day. So that's going to be a big game. It
that's
could be a seeding
real
game.
quick. Where is that game?
It is in.
I hope
It's
in
at home
Pittsburgh.
for the Steelers, so it's in Pittsburgh.
Oh boy! Oh boy! I
It's gonna
know
be a
where I'll
Christmas
be.
treat.
Yeah, Christmas miracle.
Yep. um, yeah, unfortunately, I think that's a Netflix game though. I think Netflix is streaming that, and if you watch that fight on Friday night, it was
Uh,
super buffery.
I missed Cake Paul, whatever we want to call him, in his fight. I did see the UFC fights. Some of those were pretty good, but yeah, no, I don't even. We're not going to get into 60-year-old Mike Tyson and
No,
no.
Cheeks Tyson. You see that picture?
Yeah, dude. Holy cow, Mike, what are we doing, bud?
Yeah, put some pants on. Jesus Christ. Anyway, Pittsburgh really good. Baltimore is good, but I mean, make Lamar throw the ball. He's a great quarterback. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, this is where Josh Allen comes into the picture, and he's a better QB. Jumping into that game, Kansas City at Buffalo. Buffalo pretty much was in control that entire game. They won 30-21. Came to the last quarter, probably last 10 minutes of that game. There was a 4th and 2, and Allen just really took over and
Yeah.
rushed for like a 25-yard touchdown, which was just crazy. I love when he runs. And I was getting pissed off because being a Josh Allen owner in fantasy, you want him to either throw the ball or run it in on himself. And that was a big thing down the stretch last year for Allen was they didn't hand the ball off, but he was like the one getting all those goal line touches. Now James Cook is getting these too, so it's kind of taken away his fantasy value, but can't complain. He still kind of carried me yesterday, which was big. Buffalo's a good team. I was wrong on their defense for sure. Holding Kansas City to 21 points is definitely hard, but flipping the side of the ball, I mean, you just look and it's like Kansas City, I don't know what's going on with them. And I know Pacheco's back this week as well, and I think they face Carolina, so he's going to go off. But you look at their receiving options, and Kelsey really didn't do a whole lot. They brought in Hopkins, and he had one good game against the Bucks, and that was it. He hasn't really done much, so I don't know. The passing game needs to improve, and this, like we said a couple times, that Mahomes just hasn't been his normal self this year.
No, he hasn't. The offense hasn't been as high flying as we've come to expect it. But on the other side, man, I think people wanted to say Buffalo was taking a bit of a step back, losing some of their pass catchers. And I mean, I think we were both a little wrong. I didn't know what to expect. I thought sitting at 8-2. And honestly, just real quick for Buffalo, good for them. I don't know if that's the first time they've beaten Kansas City, but it seems like every time those two play, whether it's the regular season or the postseason, Mahomes gets the ball with 2 minutes, maybe even 30 seconds to go, and somehow they trudge down the field and score late and beat them. So good for Josh Allen. I love the guy. He's awesome.
Me too.
And,
Me too.
good for Buffalo, man. They were bad for all those years for us growing up. And since they've had him, they've actually been pretty darn good. So I want to see some of these new teams like them in Detroit. I want to see them get
That'd be
far
cool.
in the playoffs and maybe
That'd be a
get to
fun.
the Super Bowl.
That would be a fun Super Bowl for sure.
Oh,
Uh, but yeah, I mean, Kansas City, I mean, they're going to be good. They have
yeah.
Carolina, Oakland, I mean, not Oakland, Vegas. I mean, they have a lot of interdivisional games coming up that it's going to be pretty easy pickings for them to bounce back, but they're still 9-1. But a couple more losses sprinkled in there, and I think we might be talking Buffalo getting that bye. And if you have to play in Buffalo instead of playing in Kansas City, that's huge. Anytime, yeah, and like you said, and I think I mentioned it before, the only way to beat the Chiefs is to not allow a close game whatsoever, where Mahomes has a chance with 2 minutes left to win the game. Because 9 times out of 10, 9.999 times out of 10, he's going to get the call. Somebody's going to screw up on defense, and that's what's going to happen. Unfortunately, it is what it is, though. I mean, um, jumping back into a game that we can touch on real quickly, Atlanta at Denver. Bo Nix went off 4 touchdowns. Huge rookie game, 307 yards passing. Good to see for him. You know, it's good to see that he has that extra year of eligibility left in college. You know, he might win the Heisman this year. So, for those who have no idea what I'm talking about, the guy transferred like 7 times when he was in college. Started off at Auburn, ended his career at Oregon, and just always tore the ball. Like he wasn't that good at Auburn, and kind of turned it around with Oregon. So kind of good to see that. But Atlanta looked like garbage. They benched Kirk. I don't know if it was because they were getting their asses kicked, but they benched Kirk. It was that bad, and I just don't understand how it could be this bad for Atlanta.
Atlanta is an interesting team because they had a lot of hype going into the season, obviously with Kirk and obviously the people they have over there. They've had a couple games this year where the offense has not looked good, but then they usually rebound. They still are 6-4 or 6-5, something like that. So I think they still have a winning record. But yeah, they've had a few games this year. You look up and you're like, God, I know this game was in Denver, I believe. So
It
maybe
was.
the altitude had something to do with it. I know some people just aren't used to it. You get out of breath a little bit easier, but
Yeah.
38-6. I mean, it's a romping from a Denver offense that, I mean, have they scored 38 points all year? Not that there was a bad offense, but yeah, that one made me scratch my head a little bit. That I think had to be probably the upset of the week. Other than, I mean, there's one or two other that you could maybe say were upsets, but 38-6 for that walloping, that had to be. Yeah, I mean, as a Kirk and Bijan owner in my one league, I think I still might be able to sneak out a win this week. We'll see if I can beat you, Chadlius. But yeah, no bueno for Atlanta.
No. They should bounce back, but yeah, that was an ugly game. Moving into the last afternoon game, Seattle at San Francisco, 20-17. San Francisco looks weird this year.
Yeah,
And I don't know if it's because of all the injuries. So they were without Kittle. Obviously, Brandon Ayuk's been out for weeks. He's out for the year. Debo hasn't really looked the same since he's had pneumonia. And then CMC is still coming off that injury. He looked like garbage. Like he just looks slower than molasses. Like there's no cutting. And I don't know if this is the Achilles or what, but he hasn't looked himself. San Francisco might miss the playoffs, and I don't know. I saw Brock Purdy having to do way too much with his legs, and kind of take the ball and run with it, essentially, like I just said. But yeah, I don't know. San Francisco's a weird team this year. I can't get a judge on them. And, like I said, it scares me for CMC being a CMC owner. It's like, I didn't start him his first game back because I didn't expect his usage to be there. But
yeah.
against Seattle, I'm like, oh, I'm going to fire him up. And, no Kittle. I'm like, they're just going to feed him. He didn't really do a whole lot for me this week either. So a little nervous about him for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I would be nervous if you were a San Francisco fan because, just like you said, they've not been that normal kind of gritty team. We've seen them have some big wins this year. They've looked like that Super Bowl contending team for a couple of weeks. But and Seattle's a solid team too. That's another 500 team. But yeah, San Fran, man, they're similar to Kansas City. Obviously, KC's 9-1, but San Fran is losing these games, and you're like, they should be beating these teams. They should be walloping some of these teams. And you lose. I think that was in San Francisco yesterday too. So you lose at home
Yeah.
late to Seattle, who again a good team, but that's a team you should be beating, especially if you're at home.
Yeah, I mean, Seattle, I mean, good for Geno Smith pulling out all these wins that he
Yeah,
is. And, DK Metcalf, Jackson Smith Najigma looks really good this year.
he
The
had a
Sharp,
big week.
which is good because instead of feeding Tyler Lockett for like they did last year, they're, opening up the playbook for JSN. But yeah, not good for San Francisco. We'll see if they can pull it out against Green Bay at Green Bay this week. So not any easier for sure. Last game of the week, Cincinnati at Los Angeles. Couple missed field goals late. Kind of blew the game for Cincinnati. Burrow and Chase are having career years, and if you flip the record, you're talking Burrow's going to win an MVP this year, and it's sad because it's all on coaching. And I've been saying this for 2 years, pretty much since they made it to the Super Bowl. They needed to fire Zach Taylor because he's just not the guy, unfortunately. And we're seeing, we're seeing it happen right before our eyes. Burrow is going out and literally playing his life, like his life depended on it. 356 yards passing, and then T. Higgins led with 148 yards receiving as well. And I just don't know what more you could do to try to win a game. It's what's eerie is it's very Jets like, where they're just losing these games that they should be winning. And this is not taking anything away from what Los Angeles is doing. The Chargers are a good team. This is going to come back to bite every team that didn't land Jim Harbaugh.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you hit the nail on the head with that one. Cincinnati, they've already lost too many games. I think I'm ready to group them in the category of they're not making the playoffs. Now we'll see the AFC. We mentioned this last week. It's still kind of open, but they're in that little group where you got to start winning not only a couple of games, they got to win almost every game for the rest of the season. I think Cincinnati has 7 losses now. You're talking about you know Burrow's having a great year, Chase is having a great year. They've had some production from Gesicki at the tight end. Obviously Higgins is there. Um, But I guess I'd ask you this: is it Zach Taylor that needs to go? Is it the
Yeah.
defensive? Because they're giving up a lot of points.
Yeah, their defense is porous, and it's funny because Zach Taylor, I want to say, was a defensive-minded coach. I think he came from, I think he might have been in the McVay system. I'll double check that once I pass it back to you. But yeah, I mean, it's him. It's a play calling. It's a defense. The defense has been miserable. I hate to say it, but they're going to have to kind of do a retool and do it quickly on that defense. I mean, Jamar Chase is up for a contract now. I mean, they're going to be paying a lot of money to him because you don't want to separate Burrow and Chase. That's not even in a question. But yeah, I don't know where you go from here. I mean, you fire your coach. That's going to be an attractive job. I mean, I can see, the Ben Johnsons of the world taking that one over. But that doesn't fix their defense. Their defense is miserable.
Yeah, you can have Burrow and Chase having career years, but you're giving up too many points. And again, the Chargers are a good team, but you're giving up 34 points to a Chargers team who has my favorite quarterback, Justin Herbert. We know that, but he's throwing to guys like Lad McConkey and Quentin Johnston, and again, those guys are good. So we think. McConkey's really been breaking out, but I think it does go back to the coaching, like you said. You got to give the Chargers a lot of credit for snagging Harbaugh, and he's turned that team around quickly.
Yeah. So Zach Taylor was a quarterbacks coach with the Rams. So he was an offensive guy. I always thought he was a defensive guy for whatever reason. I think of the former Chargers coach. But yeah, Jim Harbaugh he's done a great job. I mean, he's gotten the most out of Justin Herbert. They can establish the run. I think the main thing there is J.K. Dobbins has been healthy this year, and they can really rely on him to pound the rock, which has been great. And then, yeah, like you said, He's throwing to McConkey, and then Quentin Johnston has had a really nice year. He's not having those drops like he was in the offseason and last year, so it's been kind of a nice turnaround for him. But Cincinnati, it's not over yet. Obviously, they still have a chance just because of how porous the AFC is. They have a bye week next week, and then on December 1st they play at home against Pittsburgh. Then they got at Dallas, at Tennessee versus Cleveland, and then Denver and Pittsburgh again. So we'll see. We'll see what ends up happening for them. I believe in Burrow, but yeah, not looking good.
You got at least 3 wins you should have if you're Cincinnati right after that bye, but you got Pittsburgh, I think you said twice, who's looking pretty good. And then who was the other one?
Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Tennessee, Dallas. So all winnable games, really. One thing I wanted to note too is for Thanksgiving, can we talk about the fact that we have to watch I almost called him Danny DeVito, Tommy DeVito versus Cooper Rush.
Boy, I'll tell you, if that doesn't get you jazzed up to eat a big plate of Thanksgiving food, I don't know what will.
Yeah, no idea, my friend. But anything closing? Need anything big in fantasy this week? Tonight's game?
Yeah, I need. Who do I have going tonight? Who's playing? Houston. Tank Dell. We need my boy Tank. I think is Nico Collins back?
Yeah, he's back.
Yeah, that's not great for me. But Chad's got the kicker for Houston, and I've got Tank Dell. So, and I think I'm up like 2 points right now. So,
all right.
Tank, do me a favor, catch a touchdown for me.
Yeah. Well, I'm rooting for you on that one. I have close matchup. I'm up 5. He has Nico. I have CeeDee Lamb. Could kind of go either way. Realistically, I don't like my chances just based off of Cooper Rush.
Yeah.
But we'll see. I mean, as long as Lamb plays, he's going to get fed at least 14 targets. So we'll see.
I like that number.
All right. We'll close it out and talk to you guys next week.
Next week will be 40.
Yep, that's a big one.